That's right, we couldn't get enough of those wonderful dreams of Santa's 9 tiny reindeer, dancing sugar plums, things like snakes and spiders in my hair, and pumpkins screaming into the dead of night, much to the delight of boys and ghouls everywhere. I'm Arielle with Channel Frederator, and we're back with 107 more facts of The Nightmare Before Christmas. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. Disney's initial thoughts to bring The Nightmare Before Christmas to life were brought on by the success of Tim Burton's original short entitled Vincent. Although Vincent was released 11 years prior to The Nightmare Before Christmas, Burton had already solidified the artistic trends that he would eventually carry on into The Nightmare, including German expressionism. Our skeletal hero Jack can be seen in his earliest conceptual form in the animated short. He appears in the upper left-hand corner of the screen while Vincent reflects on the horrors he invented. Jack can also be seen as part of the gaggle of Vincent's horrors that swept his mad laughter into terrified screams. Look for him again on the left side of the screen, minus his snazzy pinstripe jacket. Although Burton almost had Disney convinced to bring The Nightmare Before Christmas to life just after he created Vincent, he later stated that he hated working as a Disney animator because he couldn't even fake a Disney style. For someone who supposedly didn't fit the Disney mold, Burton has still been involved in a number of Disney films, from The Black Cauldron in 1985 to Alice in Wonderland to the anticipated 2019 remake of Dumbo. Burton explained that part of his leanings towards the works that examine the dead and spookier elements of our world has to do with where he grew up as a child. Burton lived in Southern California, and though death was not an easy topic to discuss with his own family, he cited the Hispanic culture of treating death as a celebration of one's life as inspiration for most of his work, including The Nightmare Before Christmas. As he got closer to getting the production greenlit from Disney, Burton brought on fellow Beetlejuice co-writer Michael McDowell to adapt his poem into a screenplay. Burton and McDowell experienced the creative differences throughout the creation of the screenplay, which ultimately resulted in the film being made into a musical and led Burton to seek out Danny Elfman for help writing the film's iconic songs. Pre-production for the film had its humble beginnings in Elfman's house, where he and Burton went over Burton's story ideas and drawings. Elfman then took those ideas and translated them into song over the course of about 3 days, and then the process began again. The pair continued in this way until they had 10 songs to work with. While working on the soundtrack, Elfman ensured the movie wasn't bound to a particular period by avoiding the usual musical trends that animated films tended to follow. He wanted the movie to remain timeless and an instant classic. Filming began on The Nightmare Before Christmas before the final screenplay had actually been developed. The crew could only wait so long because stop-motion animation is such a time-consuming process, and they started to work once Danny Elfman finished a majority of the film's songs. The first sequence the animators worked on was Jack's musical exploration of the customs of Christmastown called What's This? In order to create the feel of a living illustration on a physical set, the film's production design team covered the set in clay and then etched cross-hatched marks into clay all over the set. An oil-based clay is also provided in the mold that the film's 4 sculptors used to cast the entire, cast. The clay models allowed the sculptors to create plaster molds from their forms without tearing the mold. But clay wasn't the only type of model used in this film, of course. The stop-motion animators would often act out sequences with director Henry Selick to ensure that the characters' movements would seem as realistic as possible. Each movement of the puppets and cameras were run through at least 3 to 4 test shots before the final shot was allowed to be taken. Animators included the final layer to the nightmare with some select cartoon additions, such as the ghosts you see carrying Christmas packages over the town. Artists use a very familiar technique we've talked about often, rotoscoping, to trace the movements of the puppets frame by frame. The animators would then draw in the characters or effects around the puppets, and the 2 shots would be composited to create the final product you see on screen. Out of all of Burton's films, The Nightmare Before Christmas comes the closest to replicating Burton's own sketches of his own characters on screen. In fact, Burton first sketched Jack out while he was on the phone doodling. So yes, all those articles you read about how doodling is good for concentration were true. Jack was created as a result of Burton pondering the idea of making a main character with no eyeballs. Our bony hero's attempt to spread happiness through the world, but ultimately ending up frustrated by his failures, is something of a metaphor for how Burton felt about life when he was growing up. That you can say something, but the meaning would come out entirely wrong. The main inspiration for Halloween Town comes from the German silent horror film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is often heralded as cinema's first true horror film. Halloween Town's holiday counterpart, Christmastown, was meant to give off Dr. Seussian vibes, much like Whoville in the book How the Grinch Stole Christmas, one of the inspirations from The Nightmare Before Christmas. On the other hand, the real world, which we see Jack delivering Halloweenified Christmas presents, is very straight-laced and plain, which is representative of the world we, the audience, live in. Burton explained that the movie is something like watching The Grinch backwards, where Jack sees what Christmas is all about, loves it, and decides to replicate it for himself. Before working on stop motion for The Nightmare Before Christmas, Selleck had experience doing stop motion animation for MTV, then for Pillsbury with 9 Pillsbury Doughboy commercials. So if you think you see a little bit of the giggling doughboy and Oogie's evil nature, well, you wouldn't be wrong. Because of his perfectionist streak, Selleck actually refused to watch The Nightmare Before Christmas for several years after finishing work on the movie. The original opening for the movie, which never made it past storyboarding, started off with a calendar flipping all the way to Halloween, accompanied by a jack-o'-lantern. Viewers follow the camera as it goes through the pumpkin's eye and proceed with the title sequence. The scene in which Jack deliberates the meaning of Christmas on his chalkboard was cut slightly short by eliminating Jack's drawing of Sandy Claus turning monstrous when Jack spins the board around. Photos of the next deleted scene were used in promotional materials, but never made the final cut. The trio of devious kiddos, Lock, Shock, and Barrel all crowd into their elevator with snacks so they can watch Oogie get to work on Santa and Sally. However, Jack drops onto the elevator while the kids are inside, scaring them senseless before moving onto Oogie's territory to save the day. When Jack is alone in the graveyard lamenting his failures with Christmas, he was initially confronted by Santa at this point in the movie. The deleted scene contains a lot of differences from the actual movie, including Jack losing his Sandy Claus suit and Santa having a bit of an angry streak, among other variations. This same scene contains quite a few continuity errors, which is likely why it was cut out of the film. One of Selleck's favorite background characters in the movie is the Corpse Kid, the boy with his eyes sewn shut. According to Selleck, the Corpse Kid embodies the spirit of legendary Disney and Pixar screenwriter, storyboard director, animator, and voice actor Joe Ranft. Although a little on the strange side, the Corpse Kid, or Ethan as he's known in the trading card game, loves Christmas as much as any living kid would. Although Ranft did not voice the Skull Kid, he did voice Igor and served as storyboard supervisor as well. Of all the extremely complex characters in the film, Oogie Boogie actually proved to be the most challenging to bring to life on the silver screen. The scene in which Oogie is pulled apart and scatters his bug guts was only composed of 4 shots. However, it took an entire month to film due to the complexity of the puppet's movements. The clown with the tearaway face was supposed to be a lot creepier, complete with a bloody mess under its face. Jeffrey Katzenberg, former chairman at Walt Disney, shut the idea down while the film was in production. Selleck agreed to the change to the character, and the tearaway face reveals nothing more than a hollow space. The reason Danny Elfman related so well to Jack was due to his stint as a lead singer of his band Oingo Boingo. He likened the position of a lead singer to King of Halloween Town. It's widely known that Elfman also provided the singing voice for the Pumpkin King, along with creating all the film's musical numbers. However, Elfman was originally supposed to be the speaking voice for Jack too. Selleck actually didn't like Elfman's version of Jack's lines and voiced this opinion to Burton, resulting in the pair choosing Chris Sarandon for Jack's speaking parts. Elfman resented the decision so much that he refused to compose the score for Burton's next film, Ed Wood. The dynamic duo eventually made up over coffee in Kansas City, where Burton was filming Mars Attacks, and have been nothing but friendly ever since. Don Amiche, who you probably know best as the voice for Shadow in Homeward Bound, was almost cast as the voice for Santa, but his tone proved to be too grouchy for the Jolly Red Man. The role was also proposed to James Earl Jones, aka Mufasa. But he and Elfman reportedly wound up shouting at each other during their meeting. Ken Page, the voice of the villainous Oogie Boogie, ended up getting the role of Santa because he had the same attorney as Danny Elfman. The attorney told Elfman that he knew the perfect candidate for the type of singing voice he was looking for, a mix of Cab Calloway and Fats Waller, for the Oogie Boogie song, and the rest is history. Prior to his appearance in The Nightmare Before Christmas, Page held roles such as King Gator in All Dogs Go to Heaven and Darnell Watkins in Family Matters. Typically though, Page was on stage in theatrical productions, not in films. However, when Page auditioned and gave the character something of a blend between the Cowardly Lion of The Wizard of Oz and the demon from The Exorcist for a voice, Selleck and Elfman were sold on Page for the part. To this day, Page thoroughly enjoys singing Oogie's song and surprising kids with his line, "Well, well, well. What have we here?" Chris Sarandon, the speaking voice for Jack, stated that he loved working on the film, even though he did have a couple of parts he had to re-record after viewing the whole movie with Burton prior to its release. As an actor who had mostly worked in live-action films, Sarandon stated that for his role in an animated film, it was his responsibility to give Jack more amped-up emotional reactions to match the spectacular settings on screen. Sarandon also admits that, though he could have sung the parts for Jack and done alright, Elfman did a better job than he could have at the time. Selleck admitted that the title of the movie, Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, did upset him initially, as he felt that his efforts on the film weren't appropriately recognized. The title sequence had already been created, with the film's title spelled out in candy corn when Burton's name was added to the title about a month before the movie was released. Years later, Selleck had acknowledged that the decision to call the film Tim Burton's was likely a good marketing decision, as it pulled in an audience craving another Burton spectacular. Burton, on the other hand, was unsure about the decision to call the movie Tim Burton's, because he felt it identified his work as a brand name. The name change also distinguished the Disney film from the much scarier horror flick, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Of course, it's well known that this wasn't the only source of contention between Selleck and Burton during production. Plot-wise, Selleck wanted everything to be made right at the end of the movie, while Burton wasn't a fan of the shots of Santa saving the day. The final call came after Burton showed the movie to a group of his friends who insisted that he kept those feel-good moments in the movie. In 2006, when the film was up for re-release in 3D, Selleck was very apprehensive about the film's conversion, as Disney's initial foray into the realm of 3D was with the completely computer-generated movie Chicken Little. Burton was worried that because Nightmare was created with a series of photographs on flat film, the movie would end up looking like flat cutouts constantly zooming off the screen. Thank goodness it didn't. After seeing the final product, Selleck reported that he thoroughly enjoyed the 3D edition of his directorial debut. He reported that it warmed him to feel taken back to the sets that he and Burton created, and that it was a more immersive experience for the audiences. Burton also became a fan of 3D for the movie because he liked the texture that the effects gave the puppets and felt that it accentuated the fact that the film was a stop-motion production. Disney initially advertised the movie with the 3D lenticular poster, so that it's almost like the movie was meant to be in 3D anyway. The Nightmare Before Christmas was the first ever stop-motion film to be fully converted for your 3D viewing pleasures. 2006 also brought on a re-release of the film's soundtrack, accompanied by covers of several selections by Marilyn Manson, Fall Out Boy, Fiona Apple, She Wants Revenge, and Panic at the Disco. 4 demo versions of some of Elfman's original masterpieces were also included in the revamped soundtrack. In 2008, for the film's 15th anniversary, a new cover album was released entitled Nightmare Revisited. The album featured Flyleaf, All American Rejects, Rise Against, Korn, and Plain White T's. Basically, it was your perfect 2000s cover album. The film has also since been released in 4D at the ultra-magical El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, with an October run of the film every year since 2010. During October, the El Capitan features some of the artwork and set pieces from the making of The Nightmare Before Christmas, as well as some ghost-free tours of the theater. The patrons who attend the film at El Capitan may also attend the Pumpkin King Dinner, which hosts such dishes such as blood punch and the Italian eyeball soup. A special event at the Hollywood Bowl called The Nightmare Before Christmas Live took the world by storm in recent years as well, with several familiar faces like Elfman, Catherine O'Hara, the voice of Sally and Shock, Paul Rubens, the voice of Locke, and Paige. Elfman, who was victim of stage fright just as much, if not more than, any regular guy, initially resisted the thought of performing live to any type of audience. It took a little encouragement from Helena Bonham Carter, who sang the parts for Sally that evening at the first ever live performance of Nightmare at the Royal Albert Hall, before Elfman overcame his fear for the sake of the audience. During the show, Elfman, O'Hara, and Rubens all worked together to provide the voices for Lock, Shock, and Barrel for Kidnap the Sandy Claus. For her performance of Sally's song, O'Hara's makeup includes a set of stitches on her neck to match her puppet counterpart. And if you hang around after the credits, you know, kind of like a Marvel movie, you might get a taste of Elfman's former band, Oingo Boingo. But don't get used to this type of performance occurring every year. In 2016, Elfman explained that he attempted yearly performances with Oingo Boingo for 15 years and hated being so predictable in his scheduling. Burton is a big fan of the Nightmare Before Christmas toys from Japan due to their texture and appearance, and has stated that he's impressed by their ability to almost be animated. Although The Nightmare Before Christmas has been included into the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland, Burton stated that he feels pretty conflicted about his character's presence on the ride, as the movie was never viewed as a special project by Disney during its creation. In the Haunted Mansion attraction, Jack takes on his Christmassy persona and causes holiday havoc throughout the duration of the ride. The alteration of the ride runs from September through December annually at Disneyland. Just 4 months out of the year. Plan your trip from now. Jack and company have made frequent appearances in Disney video games since their original appearance in Kingdom Hearts, beginning with Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. In the game, Jack, the ever-helpful hero, attempts to help Sora get his memory back. In Kingdom Hearts 358 Over 2 Days, Jack is once again looking for inspiration for Halloween Town and pays careful attention to Roxas's battles to look for that new stroke of genius. Kingdom Hearts 2 has Jack at it again, trying his hand at making Christmas one more time. His plans are thwarted by Lock, Shock, and Barrel, among many other mishaps caused by Maleficent. We also find out that Sora doesn't believe in Santa. The Nightmare Before Christmas was nominated for several awards when it was released, and did come away with a few wins. Of the major awards, the film was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects and a Golden Globe for Best Original Score in a Motion Picture. The crew came away with 2 wins at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror, with Saturn Awards for Best Fantasy Film and Best Music. Selleck received an Annie Award for Best Individual Achievement for Creative Supervision in the field of animation. Deanne Taylor, art director for the film, also took away an Annie Award for Best Individual Achievement for Artistic Excellence in the field of animation. And finally, the film won the all-important Blimp Award for Favorite Movie at the Kids' Choice Awards in 1994. After 25 years, it looks like Nightmare will be getting a sequel after all. But it won't be a new movie. Tokyopop acquired licensing rights for The Nightmare Before Christmas and will be using those rights to produce the first new Nightmare Before Christmas comic series. Tokyopop announced the move in September 2017 at the Disney manga panel during New York Comic-Con and said that they would publish the sequel in May 2018. The sequel is entitled The Nightmare Before Christmas: Zero's Journey. The comic will follow Jack's faithful ghost dog Zero as he becomes lost in Christmastown. Once Jack discovers that Zero is missing, he puts Halloween on hold to search for his loyal companion. The sequel will be written by DJ Milky. Stu Levi, Tokyopop founder's pen name. Kei Ishiyama, author of Grimm's Manga Tales, is set to illustrate the comic. Kiyoshi Arai, whose profile includes works such as Final Fantasy VII and Nightcry, will design the comic's covers. The series will run initially as a traditional manga, with 20 issues total. It will read from right to left. Following the first run, the series will be available in full-color trade paperbacks, and in black and white manga volumes. It looks like some of the characters will be getting a little tune-up too design-wise. For example, Zero's jack-o'-lantern nose is significantly more prominent. No need to look closely to spot that little secret. Tokyopop originally produced a manga adaptation of the film back in July 2005 with a hardcover version in 2016. The film had 24 frames per second, so each character had 24 poses for each second of the movie. The film as a whole had about 110,000 frames total. Once again, I'm Arielle, and thanks for watching 107 more facts about The Nightmare Before Christmas. Who's your favorite character? Did we miss anything? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. We have videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe to Channel Frederator, your Cartoon Central on the internet.